This video presentation emphasizes the importance of the Sustainable Development Goals to the 14 CARICOM countries of the Caribbean region and identifies some specific ways of financing these goals. Compared to where they were in the 1970s, CARICOM countries have had good economic progress, but they still face severe developmental challenges that are compelling reasons for these countries to embrace the SDGs, including low real growth rates of GDP over the past 15 years, average debt to GDP ratio of 74% and higher, unemployment rate of about 13% and is twice among young people, poverty rates that range between 13 and 59% that have been increasing over recent years. The 17 SDGs cover both social and economic development outcomes that dovetail nicely with the current developmental objectives of CARICOM countries. But these SDGs will require large amounts of investment finance. The sources of financing these SDGs include domestic resource mobilization, overseas development assistance, finances from multilateral development banks, private sector financing, including domestic private investors as well as foreign direct investments. These are all important sources of financing. However, I will only elaborate on domestic resource mobilization along with private sector financing. It is estimated that around 50% of financing of the SDGs will have to come from domestic resource mobilization. And this can be realized in several ways. One, increasing tax compliance and strengthening tax administration. Two, more efficient ways of utilizing public expenditures, including transparent public procurement processes and greater accountability on government contracts. Crowding in private investments. That is to say, every dollar invested by the public sector should have a private sector crowd-in multiplier somewhere in the vicinity of 4 to 10 to 15 additional dollars from the private sector investment. This can be accomplished through blended financing approach, aggressively engaging in public-private partnerships, segmenting risk so as to allocate components of projects to companies according to their ability and willingness to take on risk. 4, engage the support of the global community in order to guarantee private investments in development projects through such agencies as MEGA and OPIC, and to provide technical assistance with strengthening tax system and fiscal management. 5, tap into the capital markets where large pools of funds can be raised and mobilized for long-term investments, including pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, endowment and trust funds, and engage and establish bond markets such as infrastructure bonds, green bonds, and thematic bonds like health, education, youth development, employment, and catastrophic bonds. And finally, engage in cross-border financing, such as establishing alliances among CARICOM countries to integrate capital markets. The same way, for example, the Pacific Alliance has integrated the capital markets of Colombia, Mexico, Peru, and Chile. Inter alia, 2 fundamental preconditions are absolutely necessary to support these investment initiatives. First, the government needs to create an economic environment for private sector to become more engaged in the Sustainable Development Goals. This would include a clear and predictable tax regime, reasonably open trade policy, strong monetary policy framework and sustainable exchange rate policy, a regulatory framework that supports open competition and well-functioning labor market, and structures support entrepreneurship and innovation. And secondly, the creation of a dedicated unit or agency with a cadre of persons with technical competencies in public and private sector, financing, investment, and management, as well as knowledge of the financial and technical dispensations that will be available from the global community in order to support the Sustainable Development Goals at the national level. In summary, the SDGs present a good opportunity for CARICOM countries to reactivate their economies along a development trajectory that will enhance the general living standards of the people in the region. But financing of the SDGs will require large and sustained amounts of investment funds. Governments cannot and should not do this alone. Much of this financing will have to be sourced from domestic resource mobilization and private-public partnerships. In addition to the traditional overseas development assistance, FDI, and multilateral development agencies financing.